Okay, so it's 3 p.m. sharp, so let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from wherever you're joining us from this time. My name is Johanna Siljakus, and I work for the Transport Sector Office at the Asian Development Bank. And I would like to warmly welcome you to today's webinar, Accelerating Freight Decarbonization in Asia, Lessons from eFAST India by Sharwari Patki from WRI India. This webinar is organized under the umbrella of the e-mobility support and investment platform for Asia and the Pacific, what we call the e-mobility platform for short, which aims to build capacity and support the scale-up of financing of e-mobility initiatives. The platform is operated by ADB, co-implemented by UNEP and co-financed by the GEF, the Global Environment Facility. And as part of this webinar series, we have webinars lined up every 2 weeks for you. So on the screen, you can see our upcoming webinars. Our next one takes place in 2 weeks' time, when Undersecretary Rafaelita Aldaba will present a perspective from the Philippines on establishing an EV industry. We'll share the registration link to that one in the chat in a bit. We'd also like to remind you about ADB's flagship event, the Asia and the Pacific Transport Forum 2024, which is hosted by ADB in Manila next week with the theme Clean Transport for All. In case you're still interested to join us, you're located in Philippines, for example, and you're available to join us in Manila, please be in touch as the registration was closed earlier this week, but we can still probably accommodate any late registrations. And yeah, so actually during this transport forum, the e-mobility platform will host a training session on Friday, 17th of May at 9 a.m. Called Ramping Up Electrification of Transport, where we'll be discussing topics such as emerging e-mobility technologies, creating an enabling environment for e-mobility, acceleration and just transition. So we hope to see at least some of you there next week. But for now, let's move on to our today's agenda. So I'll hand over to Tom Fleming from our implementing partner, Integrated Transport Planning. He'll be moderating today's session and walking us through the house rules and presenting our speaker later on. So I'll hand over to Tom. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Johanna, and hello, everybody. So yeah, just to begin with a few house rules. So microphones will be muted throughout the webinar unless you are invited to speak. This will just help us to maintain the sort of flow and rhythm of the webinar. And if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. I will pick them up and put them to Shivari, our speaker, at the end of the webinar after the presentation. So please do think of any good questions as they come to mind, and do feel free to share. Next slide, please. Fantastic, thank you. So today I'd like to welcome Sharwari Patki from WRI India. Sharwari is Programme Head of Electric Mobility within the Sustainable Cities and Transport Programme. And Sharwari will be presenting to us today on the eFAST platform, which is India's first freight platform dedicated to freight electrification. So without further ado, Sharwari, I'll hand over to you, and you'll take us through your slides.
Hey, Joanna, and thank you, Tom, for that warm introduction. And I'm going to share my screen. Can someone confirm if you can see it?
Yes, I can see that, Sharwari.
Great. So once again, thank you so much to ADB team and GEF team for arranging this topic webinar. And I would like to share what is the collective efforts we are doing under eFAST India platform. So essentially, eFAST India is the acronym for Electric Freight Accelerator for Sustainable Transport in India. Niti Aayog, who is the government think tank, is the lead partner for this particular platform, whereas WRI India is secretariat. Before even jumping into what we have done in eFAST, what could be the learnings which can be applied to other countries in Asia Pacific, I would like to spend probably a minute on why freight electrification is important. And this is an interesting global benchmarking. Basically, this graph tells us that in terms of number of vehicle, stock of the vehicle, freight vehicle are extremely small proportion of overall stock. But because the high emission and heavy running, which is typically done by freight vehicle, emissions which are caused by freight vehicle is disproportionate, and we have captured practically only 4 markets globally, and I think the format and the trend is common across globe, and that is what necessitates that we need to pay attention to freight along with all other vehicle classes electrification. Because as per the trend, if I take example about India, majority of the success stories what we have seen in the transport electrification come from the lower load classes like 2-wheeler and 3-wheelers, and freight is probably the last one to pick up globally as well. So moving from the global scenario to the Indian scenario, just to give you number sense, out of 100% freight movement happens in India, 71% movement is actually road freight movement, and other modes like railways and inland waterways share the remaining half. In terms of overall truck population, entire LCV, MDV, HDV is less than 5%, around 4 point something. And they actually have disproportionate energy emission contribution, 34% to 60% by 2050. And one more interesting topic, probably we will speak about this, how it impacts overall technology transition in freight, that around 65% of the trucks are owned by small fleet owner. And when we say small, they own less than 5 trucks. Why this particular conversation is important? Of course, emission is definitely the prime important from a climatic perspective, but from an India perspective, where we do not have major fossil fuel reserves, and we are highly dependent on oil imports, energy security is one more area why we need to think about freight electrification. Secondly, today truck consume almost 28% of the oil we import. So that is 80-20 rule. And similarly, the operational cost of the electric truck is way less than diesel truck. So it also gives us opportunity in the long run to reduce the logistic cost. For the eFAST journey so far, basically, what was the genesis of forming a platform? When we started, and when we say we, it is not only WR India or a particular organization, it is collectively all industry and knowledge partners put together. We realized that the capex cost is much higher, around 2.5 to 3%. There is no charging infra sufficient available along the highways, along the different modes of multimodal logistic paths. Then there is no very clear policy support which comes for freight electrification, and whatever models are available, first of all, these are not as many as the diesel variants, and whatever models are available have limited ranges. This put together actually reduces lack of stakeholder confidence, and that was the genesis of starting eFAST. And what we wanted to do is, how do we ensure that the level of maturity of multiple partners can be raised? Can we raise that bar? Can we create coalition of industry network, because if the technology transition in freight has to happen, industry has to rally behind this vision. Then can we create industry network to rally behind this vision? Can we create a one-stop shop solution where all the important data points related to freight electrification can be hosted? And that was the genesis, how we started eFAST website. And at the same time, how do we create synergy between various knowledge partner and industry partner to accelerate freight work in India? That was the idea behind it. We launched eFAST India on 7th September 2022 with hardly 4 to 5 industry partner and 3 knowledge partner. And today we have almost 17 plus knowledge partner and 70 plus industry partner. So that is where we are in terms of network strength today. And we launched in September and July last year, 2023, at Clean Energy Ministerial, we have collected ambition of 7,750 truck, which almost 16 companies have declared at Clean Energy Ministerial that they will be putting on the roads. So that's where we are. I would probably spend some time about how we went building about it, and then probably in the question answer we will try and see how does this map with for other countries. So in India, when we talk about we call the first major stakeholder called shipper, who are essentially FMCG, steel, cement companies who are producing material, and they want to transfer that material from the production factories to actual end user. For them, why this topic is important? Because some of them have already taken ambitious sustainability target. They have to adhere to their ESG norm. And at the same time, why they are important from a transition perspective? Because they are the ultimate end user. They are the one who is going to put money on the line in terms of getting freight services done. The second major stakeholder is logistics service provider, which is truck owner and truck associations community. They want to get support for low cost capital finance. Then they also need to have some technical support for better decision making, because not necessarily every logistics service provider will have in-house technical capability for going through this technology transition. In terms of vehicle OEM, they are the manufacturer. What they want is, because they in India, they themselves have declared sustainability target. They want to develop zero emission vehicle, and they want to sell these vehicles to the market, moving away from the traditional ICE work. So for them, it became a good platform where they can create awareness about the various product they have. Then charge point operator and financer, I think that's a common strata which is required for entire technology transition. One more thing what we could do during the eFAST early days was we have spoken to multiple stakeholders listed in the slide before, and we have mapped what are the different gaps and where are these opportunity, what are the mitigation strategy. I'm going to probably take a pause for a minute so that everyone can absorb this particular slide. The left side of the left slide of my screen shows what are the different challenges. It ranges from higher capital cost, TCO in some cases does not come at parity, the market is extremely disaggregated, limited range. Then who can actually mitigate these strategies? So what are the different ways we can have innovative business models? So just to give parallel from the bus sector, initially, we never had aggregated demand for buses, but the electric bus tender, what we had in India, have helped India to reduce electric bus cost almost by 30% compared to the diesel cost. That was a cost reduction possible because of the demand aggregation. So that model never existed before. So how do we create such model which are applicable for freight? So these are how do we create policy clarity, which will give industry clarity where to put money on, and then who are the exercising stakeholder who can actually change the game. And of course, policymaker, majority of the chunk can be changed by policymaker through right set of policies. And I think we will speak about policies in the remaining slides. Then we have identified what are the different action areas for this platform. So we have actually developed a platform. We understood what could be done. We have collaboratively strategized this. 3 areas which came as a major workforce areas for us, along with a different industry partner, and those are scalable pilot and demand aggregation. So how do we create pilot at a scale so that we create confidence in industry player that yes, freight electrification works, and in terms of business proposition, this could be a good viable proposition. Once we prove our point about pilot at scale, we can then move to demand aggregation. And basically, demand aggregation will give very clear visibility to or equipment manufacturer, vehicle manufacturer, which will bring down the cost. Once the cost comes down, some of the problem get automatically start, and that is how we kind of kick demand supply cycle. So that is why that pillar is important. But because this is a highly industry-driven conversation, and most of these companies are actually doing this for profit, we need to also understand how does this makes economic sense. So understanding unit economics becomes one of the critical area. The entire conversation about the transition actually hinges on unit economics conversation, which will then unravel financing option. And at the same time, long-term policy trajectory is something which is important, because today we have schemes like FAME 1, FAME 2, which is the demand incentive by government to various vehicle classes. As of now, freight is not part of that particular scheme. But if industry knows that there is a support coming in, industry then can plan their decarbonization goals in the transport sector, what is availed by them, which can push our acceleration further. So I'm going to probably spend 1 or 2 minutes each on each of these pillars. The first pillar of eFAST India is scalable pilot and demand aggregation. So how this particular pillar aligns to the larger goal. So essentially, it will give the confidence to truck owner, truck operators that if the solution design is right, if we do technical solution well, we don't have to really worry about ranges. Even if that is a limited range available today, we can actually create a solution which will not affect them operationally. At the same time, for shipper and LSPs, if they are putting trucks on the road, as on date today, the model, either shipper company puts the charging infrastructure or LSP company puts the charging infrastructure. So if we do the solution design well, we can get charge point operator, and we can reduce that amount from shipper and LSP basket. In terms of charge point operator, today, because of the limited utilization, charge point operators are not able to make money. If we are able to create good solution design under corridor electrification, basically charge point operators can get assured utilization, and they will have better ROI, which will then further attract investment in the charging infrastructure. And obviously, for vehicle OEM, they need to put manufacturing lines, they need to create supply chain. But unless and until we create that demand, vehicle OEMs will not be doing that. So this is how we feel corridor electrification can become that trigger where we can get electrification kick-started. I'm going to spend probably one more minute on this. People who are not from India may not understand the geography, but the logic remains probably for all countries as it is. So we have taken two approaches. One, how can we do use case based approach? So we can target particular sector for pilot conversation, and we can go to shipper companies, work with their respective logistics service provider, and it can be an internal plant, which is a captive movement, and it can be a intra-plant movement as well, both. But at the same time, geography specific approach or a corridor specific approach may give us faster result. So in India, we have two major ports. One is Mundra and another is Mumbai. And we have identified, if we create a port-based corridors where majority of the import and export movement happen, majority of the industries are aligned on that particular route, then we have better chances to succeed. So that is how we have taken corridor-based approach. But in order to operationalize these pilots at scale, how we have actually started, we have reached out to all shipper companies and LSP companies in the targeted geography to first understand what are their logistic requirements. And we have analyzed, are there any routes among their own logistic requirement which makes financial sense. Then if that is the case, then we started mapping, are there any products available in the market or probably upcoming product which can actually map and suit their purposes. Once that phase is done, and that is where we pulled OEM or vehicle manufacturer directly to the table. After that, we tried creating business case for each shipper and LSP, and simultaneously kickstarted techno-commercial discussion between shipper company, their logistics service provider, and vehicle manufacturers. After that, we have understood what are the operational challenges logistics service provider has to play, and simultaneously we kick-started the financiers who can put money on the line. After that, we are exploring what are the different business model these companies can go through. And then we will, once the solution is stitched, we will kind of go to the pilot execution stage. Okay, I think in terms of numbers, what makes sense for shipper and logistics service provider is how the TCO works out. But at the same time, at least in Indian context, we have understood what is the payback period, what they will get, and at the same time what would be the EMI parity, because all of them are doing monthly payments. So what is that number look like? So these are the things probably we can cover this in question and answer. And in terms of long-term policy trajectory, we have bucketed into mainly 5 buckets. What are the fiscal and non-fiscal incentives which are possible for policy research? In terms of regulatory amendment, there could be regulatory amendment like CAFE norms, which are the fuel efficiency norms, supply side mandate, which has been tried and tested in California, or it could be target setting for shipper and LSP companies, the phase out targets. At the same time, we have to simultaneously start the upskilling of stakeholder, creating that awareness and ensuring that this transition become a just transition, especially when 65% of the logistics service provider are small logistics service provider. Some interventions will be required to ensure that we have enough power and land to create the infrastructure. And today, whatever policies we are trying trying to research on, we are trying to do it technology agnostic, because battery electric is primarily commercialized, ready, available. We are mainly focusing on battery electric in the conversation, but the policy research, what we are trying to do together is technology agnostic. And at the same time, how do we create innovative business and financing mechanism to ensure that we stitch a solution well? I think these are the 5 bucket broadly I have spoken about, and this is where I'm going to stop sharing, and probably Tom, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shivari. I think first it's really exciting to learn about the activities of eFAST India. And I think the growth you've experienced also since launching in just 2022 is really sort of inspiring to see as well. I think it's important that we don't overlook the freight discussion in the context of electrification, electric transport. I think particularly with it being a hard to abate sector, it can be easily overlooked, but I think that it's obviously very important to have a clear plan, and I think that's evidently what you have with the eFAST platform. So thank you so much for sharing. So please do post any questions that you have in the Q&A for Shivari, and we'll pick them up. I just wanted to kick off with one myself. Which is really just to probe into the lessons learned maybe from the platform a little bit more, Shivari, and particularly thinking if you were launching again today, perhaps in another country, maybe another one of our DMC partners, is there anything you'd do differently, and what kind of lessons can you share for others embarking on a similar journey to yours?
Tom, thank you so much for that interesting question. So if we would have to launch similar platform in any other country, or if we get a chance to probably redo what we have done, one thing what we will start is we will start with business case development. We will start with number, because when we started this process in India, we initially started with awareness and talking to industry. But during the process of those industry discussions, we realized in industry, if we have to go and have any value proposition, even if it is aligning with their ESG goal, even if it is kind of, facilitating their sustainability goal, ultimately numbers are something where everything goes and gets stuck. So probably while we start mapping different stakeholders, while we start understanding what are the different problems they are facing, we would start with business analysis simultaneously.
Super. Thank you, Shivari. See, yeah, you're battling situations there. It's all okay. I mean, you mentioned sort of partners, industry partners, and within that response. And I mean, in wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how the partnerships work within eFAST, thinking about the sort of relationships between knowledge partners and industry partners, and how, for example, a partner would get involved in a pilot project. Is that something they sort of pitch to you? Is that something that you kind of collaboratively develop? How does that aspect work?
So in terms of partner conversation, I'll probably separate it out into two. One is the knowledge partner, which are different think tank organization, which are different research organization, whose goal is to put maximum zero emission trucks on the road. And other side is the industry partner. What we have done for probably better coordination, that WRI acts as a secretariat of the platform, whereas we have 3 pillars, and some of the think tank are in a way pillar leaders. So one of the think tank is taking care of pilot and demand aggregation, and that particular think tank will reach out to different industry, will reach out to different think tank, because each think tank is also simultaneously facilitating this pilot conversation, doing research, on the business case, doing research on the policy with different industry partner. So we have in a way created that structure where each organization pillar leader become answerable to how that conversation can be taken forward. At the same time, when the pilot discussion with industry happen, we have taken two different approaches and we have struggled in one. I will probably share that as well. So initially we wanted to understand who is the decision maker for putting electric truck on the road. In Indian case, logistics service provider, truck owner or truck operator is that decision maker, but unfortunately, he has limited say. He works on a thin margin, and in a way he gets dictated by what the FMCG or steel or cement, the shipper companies wants him to. So we have simultaneously created that network with the shipper companies. You can say the Unilevers and Nestle's and steels and cements and other players, e-commerce players of the world, so that we start pushing them. Okay, fine, even if you are providing X rupees per ton per kilometer today, are you okay to give long-term contracts to logistics service provider, so that even if he is probably working at the same diesel price, even if you are not probably want to give green premium, but at least can you give assured contract so that we can stitch a solution. And now in Indian ecosystem, we have reached to a level where some of the shipper companies have already started giving 7-year contract, 8-year contract to logistics service provider. And against that contract, if the company is a good AAA rated company, against that particular contract, the logistics service provider can take a call and create a bankable solution. So that is how the pilot discussion are going ahead. But again, in that discussion as well, each shipper company have their established relationship with logistics service provider, their own logistics service provider. So it is not just fine to probably create a pool of shipper companies and create a demand pool and create a pool of some random logistics service provider to kind of do this matchmaking. It also became important for us to understand shipper A wants to probably work with LSP A, LSP B, LSP3 because they are their, in a way, preferred LSPs to go through the technology transition. For a normal business, they might go to market and pick up some truck. But for technology transition, where they are giving the long-term commitment, they need to ensure that they have that comfort level. So then finding that shipper LSP pair started becoming important. And then if we are able to create shipper LSP pair, understand what are their logistic requirement put together, what are the vehicle requirement they have, then go back to vehicle manufacturer and find, okay, these are the different product they need. This is the logistic service requirement. Can you create, or do you have a specific vehicle available with you, which you can be put on the road? And once that tripartite understanding is created, that techno-commercial agreement is created, then you go to the next level of creating the business model. So probably in India, we are somewhere in that next phase where we are trying to create that business model. We have also tried taking the individual approaches. A particular shipper company wants to do something, but they don't have a logistics service provider. But there are, so you can call it as a rapid matchmaking. But it have seen limited success till date because these efforts happen in an extremely isolated manner, whereas a sector specific, corridor specific discussion have kind of mature to the next level. So these are the things which worked. These are the things. There are a few things which have not worked.
Okay, no, thank you so much, Shivari. And I see we have a hand up from Aaron. So Aaron, I'm going to unmute your mic and allow you to come in. I don't know if this is a question or clarification. But yeah, take it away, Aaron. You should be ready to go.
Thank you for Mr. Nari. It's a very fantastic presentation. Looking at your geography, basically in Maharashtra and Gujarat, these are the states which are also having a lot of refineries and petroleum related activities. So do you have any specific approaches for converting those type of trucks for freight carriers handling such hazardous chemicals or petroleum products? And what are the type of goods, if not, what are the types of goods carriers that you are typically prioritizing? So is there any specific safety issues that that are to be taken care of because these are heavy vehicles, and then the battery in the vehicle itself, because of the battery and other equipment of the electrification, the weight also adds, right? So is there any specific safety measures that we have to take care? Also the road conditions as well, right? These are going to go through national highways, state highways, and village highways, or something like that, village roads. So how are you handling these type of specific geography specific requirements as well? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Arun, for the question. Probably I will divide it into three different parts. The first part, what you have asked, is mainly the sector centric. Currently, the corridor, what you have seen, is towards hinting towards steel and cement and metals and minerals in that particular patch, because Mundra is one of the import port, and there are some material which gets transferred between Mundra and these industrial areas, and the ready product which gets again shipped out of Mundra for export. So we are looking at cement, steel, metal, mineral, and probably CP sanitary when it comes to Mundra. The petroleum thing, Arun, what you spoke is very important, because typically, these petroleum tanker trucks are captive fleet. They serve point A to point B in a repeated manner. There are certain cases between Bangalore and Chennai. Number of kilometer they clock actually makes business sense as well. But because most of these companies are PSU companies, the volume is high, and because it's a critical commodity which gets transferred, delays can't be accepted, etc. There are people who are working on the specifically to solve the petroleum sector truck electrification issue, and we hope to probably get some success in coming months. In terms of state specific, the question what you have asked, one thing where I feel the role of the state become extremely critical. I'm probably currently I'm focusing on the battery electric one. That is quality and quantity of power required, because some of the state may not have power surplus, and it's not only generation level power surplus or power deficit or a transmission level problem. This becomes a distribution level problem, where the state-owned distribution, electricity distribution companies, these utility companies need to upgrade their electrical infrastructure. Just to give you number sense, 55 tonner has a 248 kilowatt hour of a battery, and approximately 300 kVA transformer is required to charge it in the given stipulated time. But the 300 kVA transformer are not easily available with spare capacity so that this can be done. So it becomes also important to create the distribution infrastructure, electrical distribution infrastructure, which is a completely state subject. So I think those are the state specific issues we need to solve for, and that is where probably the corridor related discussion helps, because then you pick up a particular corridor, assess what is the supply side status in that corridor, and start solving one particular problem. Because once the model is available, the commercial model is proven, it becomes easy to draw a request a charge point operator to bring that investment. So that is a second question you ask. And then you ask about the road network. So see, currently the corridors at which we are concentrating are fairly expressways and the new national highways, where road health is not really a big issue. But other than that, yes, this is a point to be noted. And you have actually brought an interesting point about the battery weight. Yes, for example, just to give again number sense, 55 tonner has a 2 ton of a battery. So logistics service provider who is operating electric truck has straight away 2 ton loss every trip, every single trip. So in terms of policy, what can be done, we are trying to research if GVW allowance can be given for this alternative fuel freight vehicle, so that they do not have payload penalty. And globally, there has been precedences. So for example, in Europe has given, depending upon what is the load class of the truck, Europe have already given GVW allowance for alternative fuel trucking, so that logistics service provider does not have payload penalty. So I hope I have answered some of your questions well.
Thank you, Shivani. Yeah, it was very nice. All questions answered.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Aaron, for that question. We have another one in the chat from Charith. Charith asks, what kind of financial interventions so far seem to work for electric trucks in India?
Oh, that's a good question. As on date today, we have very limited financial interventions, which has shown significant success in India. What is required, as per as research what we have done, there are two things which are specifically can boost financing availability. One is first loss risk coverage. As on date today, because and this is a commercial activity by shipper companies and LSP companies. So lenders will lend only when they have a confidence that electric truck works. But till the time we establish that confidence, somebody has to assure that if there is any loss, if the borrower defaults, there is first loss risk coverage available. So that become one of the important policy intervention as per our research. And another one, which is in a way clarity required, which is the residue value framework. Because just to give you parallel from the ICE industry, if I am a logistics service provider, I am a big logistics service provider, and I want to keep my fleet young, I would sell my truck around 7 to 8 years after the usage in the second-hand market. If I'm getting 35 lakh truck, I know exactly what is the range for that second-hand purchase, and where my EMI stands, and how do I make money when I sell the asset. But as on date today, because people do not have clarity about the residue value, exact residue value which can be committed for truck, they can't do the entire business calculation. So if we have residue value framework, which is laid down, and I don't think that's a problem for only trucking. This is a common problem across electric vehicle. So that become one of the important intervention. And then there are some business model interventions which can be explored, like demand aggregation, which have seen a great success in buses, can be explored for trucking as well. So these are the few cents.
Right. Thank you, Shvari. And conscious we're coming towards the end of our allocated slot, but I couldn't let you go without asking you for your view on sort of the debate between battery electric and hydrogen. how that is perceived in India. I note that many of your slides are sort of taking more of a battery electric angle, but you did note that you were technology agnostic as well in your approach. So it'd be good to get your insights on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So whatever work we are doing in India, we are ensuring we are technology agnostic. One, not only because we want each technology to flourish, but at the same time, from an energy security goal of India, it is extremely essential that we have diversification. As on date today, so I would say we are focused towards zero emission trucking. As on date today, we are talking about battery electric because that is something which is commercially available. But at the same time, we want to start focusing on the fuel cell electric truck as well when it becomes commercially available and it starts fitting into the bill. So whatever research we are doing or whatever policy which are getting research on by one of the government department of PSA, we are ensuring that we are as technology agnostic as possible. Of course, some of the intervention would be leaning towards battery as on date today because the infrastructure needs to be made ready for battery in order to move to zero emission. And certain use cases, this is what we feel, certain use cases within the freight sector would probably continue with battery electric. For example, last mile delivery. You typically need 200, 300 kilometer a day. And if we have a fast charging, that is easily doable. Rather, in the three-wheeler cargo segment in India, we are already doing it. So certain use cases will still be predominantly get solved by battery electric, whereas heavy duty long haul, and when I say long haul, you can say 400 kilometer plus per day, that is a problem which is currently not getting solved by battery electric. So for that particular bucket, we will still have to wait out what happens in the hydrogen conversation, mainly the commercial part of that conversation, and we'll probably go there. So that's a space to watch for.
Super. Thanks, Shawari. Thanks for for providing all of fantastic answers to all of those questions. I think we have come to the end of our allotted time. So I would like to wrap this up and close. First of all, thank you very much, Shawari, for joining us today and providing such a brilliant presentation and engaging discussion as well, and to all of our participants, of course, as well, especially those who've been brave enough to ask questions as well. We will share the recording of this as soon as possible, as soon as it's ready, after the webinar, and upload it to ADB's ADB Transport's YouTube channel as well. And other than that, I'd just like to say we hope to see you next time for our webinar on the 22nd of May, same time, same place, which will be on developing a robust EV industry to accelerate e-mobility adoption in the Philippines, by Undersecretary Rafaela Aldaba. So hope to see many of you there. Otherwise, wish you well the rest of your day, and see you soon. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.